Happy Friday, everyone, and welcome into Wiltfong Whiparound. I'm Grace Remington with our Director of Recruiting 7 Sports, Steve Wiltfong. Steve, a busy weekend ahead with recruits traveling all over the country to see some of these heavyweight bouts we got going on. We're going to hit on 4 programs today in this preview, starting with Georgia hosting Auburn in the Deep South's oldest rivalry. As of last night, at least 24 prospects had either confirmed their visit or expected to be in between the hedges. So who can we expect to see there on Saturday?
Yeah, biggest recruiting weekend of the season for Georgia. The Bulldogs have the number 2 recruiting class in the country, trailing Alabama. This is a weekend that could help catapult them into the race for number 1. They have a couple official visitors, 5-star 24/7 Sports composite 5-star edge rusher Damon Wilson returns to Athens after a strong visit in the summer. You know, he's really loved the continuity of the Georgia staff and spending time with Coach Smart, Coach Chid, and company. And this is a visit that Georgia really worked hard to land, because Damon visited Ohio State in September for the Notre Dame game, and we talked about how that could potentially be his last visit. But here he is coming back to Georgia. We'll see if Miami can get an official visit now. Alabama got theirs in the summer, but this is a prospect that Georgia covets. They would love to add and see him coming off the edge for years to come. Same goes for Samuel Mpemba, a 5-star edge out of IMG Academy, who's already trending towards Georgia on the 24/7 Sports crystal ball. He's taking an unofficial to Georgia. Georgia's trying to get him back multiple times here in the fall. I think that they're the heavy favorite for Mpemba. He was at Mizzou last weekend where he saw Georgia rally and get a good win on the road at night. Now returning to Athens there for another unofficial visit. There is one more official visitor, 4-star running back Roderick Robinson from the state of California, took an official visit to Texas A&M earlier in the fall. He's currently committed to UCLA. UCLA is undefeated and doing what they're supposed to on the field. But he's got a keen eye on a couple SEC programs, and there's been a lot of buzz that Georgia can make a major move here. And we've seen Del McGee close countless backs late in the cycle in his career in Georgia. And Roderick Robinson is one who is incredibly intrigued with Georgia coming into the visit. A couple other big-time names in the 2023 class expected at Georgia this weekend, Grace, is top 247 defensive lineman Jordan Hall, who I like Georgia for. And 4-star defensive back Chris Peel out of Charlotte Providence Day there, who's making a return trip, been to campus several times, and I like Georgia for him as well. So the Bulldogs hosting several key 23s. They got a ton of coveted 2024s and 25s on campus too. So you're going to want to stay locked in to 24/7 Sports and Dogs 247 for the latest on the visitors in the 2023, 2024, and 2025 classes.
All right, we're going to stay in the SEC with this next one. Texas A&M traveling to Tuscaloosa to take on the top-ranked Tide. Now, this was the game that everyone had circled on their calendars back in May when Nick Saban and Jimbo Fisher had some pearl-clutching drama. Just a refresher for anyone who may have forgotten. Nick Saban accusing Jimbo Fisher of buying his players. Of course, Jimbo didn't appreciate that, called a press conference just to refute it, and went on an epic rant. SEC Media Days rolls around. They've called a truce, but, you know, when these things turn into memes on Twitter, we never forget. Now we're here, October 8th. Maybe this game doesn't have as much hype as it did at one point, given the way A&M's season has gone, but some of the biggest recruiting names in the country will be at Bryant-Denny Stadium. So, Steve, what's going down in T-Town?
Well, last year's game didn't have that much hype going into it either, but Texas A&M just rallied from a couple deficits or a couple losses coming into the ball game and played well. And I think they'll be up for Alabama, but obviously Alabama will be up for this game at home, and it's going to be a tremendous group of recruits heading to Tuscaloosa. None bigger than the number 1 edge rusher in the country, Keon Keeley out of Tampa Berkeley Prep, who's been to Alabama several times. When he decommitted from Notre Dame prior to the season, Alabama was the team that quickly trended on the 24/7 Sports crystal ball. He's built a really good rapport with some of their commits, certainly loves the proven track record of the program developing players, and has also really clicked with the staff. But Ohio State has certainly made a move, 2 visits in September as well. I think he has also really clicked with members of the Ohio State recruiting class and feels very comfortable in Columbus. So this is a big opportunity for Alabama to get them back on campus with Ohio State getting the last 2 serves. the number one tight end in America, Deuce Robinson, taking his long planned official visit to Alabama this weekend too. Georgia and USC are the programs that I've been hearing are near the top of the list, but Alabama's always been a major contender for Deuce Robinson. So Alabama's track record at the tight end position is as strong as anybody. This is a young man that's aiming to play not only both football and baseball in college, but also with plans of doing it both professionally. So, it'll be interesting to see how his visit goes. Some unofficial visitors, some key ones that Hank South and Tim Watts over at Bama Online have reported. Kelby Collins is an in-state defensive lineman that's committed to Florida, expected back for an unofficial visit. Suntarine Perkins is a linebacker athlete, two-way standout out of the state of Mississippi. He's a longtime commit to Ole Miss, but his name's been mentioned as alongside Alabama and his strong interest in the Crimson Tide for quite some time now. So back on campus this weekend, and certainly he has a keen eye on Alabama. Jaron Hamilton's a receiver from Florida who's stock up that a lot of schools are really coveting down the stretch. Alabama bringing him in this weekend, so it'll be interesting to see what the Crimson Tide do with Jaron Hamilton. But like Georgia, going to be a lot of elite 5-stars, top 247 recruits on campus in the 2024 and 2025 classes. So for updates from that big recruiting weekend, you're going to want to be on 24/7 Sports and Bama Online.
Now, as enticing as A&M Bama will be, all eyes are on Lawrence, Kansas this weekend. Seriously, Steve, what a wild sport we cover, that we have all these monster SEC matchups. We have the Red River Shootout, and yet Kansas is the center of the college football universe this weekend. The Jayhawks 5-0 for the first time since 2009. They are ranked in the AP poll for the first time since 2009. Now they host TCU, also ranked and undefeated. So we know it's going to be a fantastic environment. College game day in town for the first time ever. The new darling of college football, hoping the recruits hold that same sentiment. And Steve, you're reporting about 70 recruits in town. Who's headlining this group?
Yeah, they had to make room for about 150 recruit tickets when you're talking about parents or coaches and trainers, whoever's taking these young men to campus. But it's maybe the most talented recruiting weekend at Kansas that I've ever seen in my time doing this. And there's going to be several top 247 recruits on campus in the 2024 class. They have the number one player in the state, athlete BJ Kennedy, coming back. Top 247 offensive tackle Andrew Sprague. Kansas was the first to offer him. He's going to return to campus. They were the second school to offer top 247 edge rusher Williams Nwaneri, and he's going to be there too. But several guys are making their way to Kansas that already hold a scholarship offer. But I believe they go into their bye week after this, Grace. Kansas got 9 commits. A lot of them were back on campus for the win over Iowa State, so got to soak in that atmosphere last Saturday. I think Kansas has a lot of guys on the line, and these coaches are going to go on the road, and they're staying status quo as far as their approach on the trails. Who are the guys right for us? They're not going to go start chasing guys just because they're 5-0, but the phones are ringing, and they're going to hit the road and go see some top targets and make some decisions on, hey, who do we want to join this 2023 class? Because I believe there's a lot of prospects that are trying to say yes, and Coach Leipold and company about to go out and do some vetting before they allow some other young men to come into the program and try and keep this thing rolling in Lawrence for years to come.
All right, up next, we got Alabama State and Jackson State. Coach Prime will be in town, so we know that's going to be a fun HBCU game day environment. Now, Steve, we've talked before on this show about that package deal coming out of Carver High School, James Smith and Quay Rusaw, but it sounds like they're bringing a bunch of friends with them to game day in Montgomery.
Yeah, this is a game that kids in Alabama in the area have been talking about since the summer. And I know that there might have been some initial reports where people were assuming that some of these elite guys would be in Tuscaloosa. But this game is going to be a sellout. There's going to be a great pageantry about it. And these recruits want to soak in the HBCU experience. And a lot of these guys visited and spent time with Coach Robinson and company in the spring. And so this is a return visit for James Smith and Quay Russaw. Running back Antonio Trone, who has an offer from Alabama State. Kalari Gordon's a 2024. Bison Lang is a coveted offensive lineman that's trending towards Tennessee right now with Auburn in the picture. But Alabama State, they have a head coach that played 12 years in the NFL himself, a Super Bowl champion himself. That's created a lot of excitement around the program, particularly with the area high school coaches and area trainers. And they got a lot of these young men on campus. They're bringing them in for the showdown for Jackson State, and we'll see what happens, man. If they get a big win, what kind of energy will be in that locker room post-game? What kind of energy will be on that campus? I think it's an exciting storyline, and similar to our Kansas segment, man. I love seeing different schools popping up here with blue chippers on campus, and it's not the same ones week in and week out.
Yeah, I remember when Deion Sanders first took that job at Jackson State. I know we're talking about Alabama State here, but he wanted to bring more attention to the HBCUs because there's a lot of talent there. They just don't really have the marketing or PR, the same type of attention these blue blood schools are getting. But the fact that a lot of, 5-chip players are heading there instead of Tuscaloosa this weekend says a lot.
Grace, Eddie Robinson played at Alabama State too. So you're talking about a school that's special to him. And he is living proof that, hey, you can come to Alabama State and you can hear your name called in the second round of the NFL draft, and you can play 11 to 12 years in the NFL, and you can play in the Super Bowl. And so to have that kind of person in your corner office as proof is something that's going to be real exciting for these recruits and their families on campus, because all these high school football prospects still dream of playing at the highest level, whether they're a no-star or a 5-star. And Eddie Robinson Jr. is someone that is exciting and leading that charge.
Time for mailbag questions. Thank you to everyone who sent in your questions. And if we don't get to yours today, continue sending them all in, because we'll get to them on another episode. But Steve, we are going to start here with who is leading for 4-star running back Jeremiah Love, and when do you expect him to commit?
Well, I think a decision could really come at any time for Jeremiah Love, the explosive playmaker out of St. Louis Christian Brothers, who was in Indianapolis this past Friday and rushed for 3 touchdowns against Bishop Chatard. Look, this is a recruitment that I still like Notre Dame for. I think that the relationship with Dylan McCullough, Coach Marcus Freeman and company is second to none in this process. I think that the stage that Notre Dame plays on, I think that they look at Notre Dame as a potential place where a lot of NIL opportunities can come if he goes into South Bend and does what he's supposed to do at a premier position like running back. And he's expected back at the Stanford game next weekend. He attended the Marshall game earlier in the year, took his official visit over the summer. And I think that Notre Dame is the team to beat. You still got Texas A&M in there. You got Oregon. Family mentioned Georgia has also been in communication, but Notre Dame, in my opinion, has set the tone for Jeremiah Love, which would be another important pickup for Notre Dame, an offense that needs more juice. I think they have one of the best receiver classes in the country. They already have a couple dynamic running back athlete recruits in the fold, but Jeremiah Love is the kind of guy that I think could come to Notre Dame and be that Pied Piper in the backfield and be that big play guy that they're missing on the roster right now.
All right. Lincoln Riley has found immediate success in LA, starting 5-0 with one of the highest scoring offenses in the country. So this listener's question is, how is USC's undefeated start helping their recruiting for the 23 class and beyond?
I think that when you look at all the home games that they've had this year, just the attendance of all the touted recruits that are in the area, just the regular attendance of those guys and the interest in the program, I think has really juiced up the young guys. I mean, they have the number 1 recruiting class in the Pac-12 right now. They ended up flipping a coveted offensive lineman, Elijah Page from Notre Dame. And I've said numerous times on Whiparound, look, that USC is going to recruit under Lincoln Riley, good quarterbacks and receivers, dynamic running backs, great skill talent. But the success of this program is going to be based on what they do at the trenches and landing a guy like Elijah Page, 6'7", 304 pounds out of Pinnacle High there in Phoenix, Arizona. Those are the recruiting wins that are going to tell us how the potential of USC and arrow up with getting the guy that Notre Dame coveted, with Notre Dame boasting so many, or oftentimes boasting the best offensive line in college football, to go out there and get Elijah Page and keep him out west, I think is massive for them. And I think as USC continues to win, number 13 class in 2023, still got some big fish out there. 2024 and beyond, maybe they're back in the top 10 regularly.
The way Lincoln Riley dominated the transfer portal, and now he's got the recruiting to go along with it. It's almost unfair. All right, our next question. Who is involved in the recruitment of 4-star defensive lineman David Hobbs, and what does the current race look like for him?
Yeah, this is one of the biggest blue chip battles down the stretch for one of the nation's most coveted defensive line recruits. He's at Alabama this weekend, an unofficial visit. He's got an official visit to Alabama on the schedule for later in the fall. So obviously his great interest in Alabama, talking to him, talking to the family. I get the sense that the Crimson Tide are in terrific position. Georgia's a program that was able to get into the mix and get that 5th official visit that he's going to take later in the fall as well. You got Tennessee. He took his official visit to Knoxville for Tennessee's win over Florida, and him and his family love that environment. We talked about it on Whiparound coming out of that visit, and Coach Rodney Garner and his track record as a defensive line coach. Tennessee being close to home, those are some things that are exciting for Tennessee. North Carolina and Auburn are the two other schools in the mix. Then he took a Big Ten swing, was just recently at Ohio State, where he saw the Buckeyes beat Rutgers, and then was also went by Michigan the next day. His little sister is a big-time basketball recruit, and he was able to go on that trip with her and see some of the football stuff that those programs have to offer. But I think I'm still looking stronger at the SEC schools for him and North Carolina, and I really think that Alabama's in an interesting position for him as he heads into the stretch run of his recruitment, with 2 visits to Alabama still coming up.
Okay, and our final question. Do you think Michigan will make a push into the top 25 as we get closer to signing day in December? For context, their 23 class currently stands 28th in the country with 14 commits.
It does. In my favorite category, average ranking per commit, they're 21st, so a little better. They're in the top 25 in that regard, and we know it's a program that does a great job of developing players and taking a young man from 18 years old and turning him into a difference maker. By the time he's 22, they're some of the best in college football in that regard. They got a lot of names out there, Grace, still. Offensive line, a position that they're looking to solidify down the stretch. Nathan Afobe from Georgia recently took his official visit, and there's a lot of buzz there. Michigan's in great position. Spencer Fano, DJ Chester, our top 247 offensive linemen, they're going to bring in on officials later this month. And Caleb Lomu is another that they covet, that they're on his short list. Jair Hill's a top 247 athlete from Illinois that Michigan is certainly near the top of his list. Jaron Hamilton, we talked about him visiting Alabama earlier in the show, but he's a guy that Michigan's been hot and heavy on out of the state of Florida. They'd certainly like to beat Georgia for Chris Peel. Caden McDonald's a blue chip battle they're in. They're trying to flip Aaron Gates from Florida. There's a lot of names on the board for Michigan to still make a major move up the 24/7 sports recruiting rankings. They just got to finish off some of these recruitments and get them to say yes.
All right, busy times. Well, for updates throughout the weekend, keep an eye on 247sports.com, or even better, go ahead and subscribe, because our reporters, Steve, they're out there every day grinding, getting information that you can't find anywhere else. We'll be back here on Monday recapping some of the visits we talked about and more from the weekend. For Steve Wiltfong, I'm Grace Remington. Thank you for watching, and have a happy game day.